Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Over the last week, we've experienced our biggest liquidation in crypto history. Many altcoins were down 50, 60, and some even up to 80 and 90% in just as little as 10 minutes. Many people have watched this sell-off. They've began jumping into cash expecting that we're going to go lower. And so for today's video, I wanted to break down what the charts are showing us. Have we broken bullish market structure? If so, how do we prepare for further downside? And most importantly, if the market's still intact, are we still anticipating new all-time highs and an altcoin super cycle like I've been talking about? Today, I'm going to break down all of our most important indexes, jump into all of the charts that are going to explain exactly where the direction of the market is headed, and give you guys my thoughts as to why I'm still actively buying this dip and why I believe that anybody that does so is going to be greatly rewarded very soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you find any value in this video, please do me a favor. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So right off the bat, the sell-off was really caused around the stock market and all of this fear around the tariffs. Trump came out and announced 100% tariffs to going back to China once more. We ended up seeing the stock market sell off pretty substantially. Keep in mind that it's not going to look quite as big inside of the stock market, but this dip was pretty massive, going from the top of the wick all the way to the bottom. You know, a 3% move in just one day for the stock market is pretty severe. So when the market started to drop, we started to see that impact crypto prices as well. We had this absolutely massive pullback where Bitcoin pulled back. It went from all the way up here to 122,000 and a half, all the way back down to 107,000. And we temporarily broke below that primary support. So this was causing a lot of people to freak out. You know, big drop in Bitcoin, big drop in stocks. But the big fear across the board amongst everybody was really centered around these altcoins. Now, this is going to go into some of the charts that I was just talking about last week. When we look at these, notice how much bigger this wick actually is inside of these altcoin charts. And if we jump into a 4-hour time frame, these ones went much lower than their support. We had this support held at a bunch of different times over the last month, and we can see that this wick dropped us much lower. For whatever reason, there was a lot of mischievous activities going around on Binance. If you were actually watching that crash happen, most of the big sell-offs were taking place through the Binance altcoin. So there was a deleveraging event that happened. Nobody really knows exactly whether it was a big player on Binance that was a liquidity provider that went bankrupt, or whether Binance was just counter trading, saw all the over-leveraged positions, and then ultimately just looked to liquidate those. Because we know for a fact Binance has counter traded amongst their customers in the past. We've seen it a number of times. Virtually all of the exchanges do this, but some of them are a little bit more shady than others. Binance has always been kind of a front runner for the shady on-chain activities where they're constantly counter trading against their own exchange base. So these deleveraging events aren't unheard of, and it doesn't matter whether we're looking at the total market cap 1, 2, or 3. Every single one of these saw a massive deleveraging event inside of the altcoins, only for the price to close all the way back up at this same range. So realistically, we saw this massive sell-off right here. From the very top of the move all the way to the bottom was about a 40% drop inside of some of these altcoins. And it doesn't really matter which index we're looking at. All of them were about the same furiosity. From the very high to the low, you're looking at anywhere from about 30 to 50%. And that was how big the altcoin swing was. And it was all from a massive deleveraging event. And if you notice, you can tell that it was deleveraged because of the fact the price instantly came right back up to reclaim the same level. It's almost as if this price didn't even move. We're still inside of this same range that we've been in for the last month or so. The only difference is we had this massive deleveraging event that honestly liquidated a lot of people that were either over leveraged in longs or people that had their stop losses that were trading. Everybody got wrecked inside of that one big move. But if you were somebody that was just holding the long term of the trend, chances are you're right there back where your prices have always been for the last month or two. Nothing has really changed in that regard. So we saw this massive deleveraging event, and I want to talk a little bit about that, what it means for the altcoins, what it means for Bitcoin, what it means for everything moving forward from here. Now right off the bat, guys, if we're looking at Bitcoin, I think it's very apparent that Bitcoin is just inside of this range. You know, nothing has changed for Bitcoin. This is the easiest chart that we can look at. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on Bitcoin. We're going to jump into the altcoin charts. And I want to make sure that you guys know exactly what I'm thinking is happening here. Because so far, over the course of all of this consolidation for Bitcoin, we've just been ping-ponging inside of this range. So the fact that the range support didn't fail, the fact that the range resistance didn't fail, both sides of the range are being tested. At this point, the market really is kind of neutral. And I would say because we've been on this bull trend already, it is leaning bullish. Eventually, whether we chop lower, whether we come back to the top of the range, it doesn't change anything. Overall, I am looking at this as breaking bullish. So I'm not too worried about Bitcoin. The problem that we had was the altcoins. It wasn't Bitcoin that got deleveraged. It was actually all of the altcoin prices. So if we come over and take a look at the altcoins, we can see kind of the same similarities. Now, all of these have the deleveraging event. It doesn't matter whether this is the total market cap, whether it's the total 2, or whether it's the total 3, all three of these charts saw the same deleveraging event. So now I want to come over here and actually jump into Ethereum, because I think that Ethereum is going to tell the bigger story as far as what is actually taking place right now. Now, this is the deleveraging event inside of Ethereum. It looks a lot like all of the other charts, but I noticed something inside of this setup right here in Ethereum that gives me a lot of confidence to keep buying this dip. This is a pattern that we've seen before. We've seen it not only once, but multiple times over the last 10 years of crypto price action, and really over the last 5 and 6 years, we've seen it happen quite a few times. Now, if we're looking at Ethereum today, it looks almost identical to the same consolidation that we were just through. So we've been talking a lot about how Bitcoin and Ethereum sync up in price, where Ethereum's always kind of following what Bitcoin did before it. And we can see that over every single one of our last cycles. Now, what I've been talking to you guys a lot about has really just been mapping out how similar this current cycle is for Ethereum and Bitcoin both. And what I indicated by that was really how the consolidation worked in the last cycle, where we had the blow off top and then we started this long-term triangle formation. Now, what I noticed was that Ethereum synced up to the same price action. Same thing with the lows, the lower high that formed inside of the triangle, and even this choppy price action that we saw at the range highs, it's all pretty much the same. Breaks down, finds support, breaks down, finds support, make another false attempt at a breakout, and then that leads us into our final capitulation. Ethereum and Bitcoin have been syncing up to this pattern for a long time. And what I've been telling you guys is that once Bitcoin broke out of that pattern, once we got outside of that downtrending resistance, that was really what set in that new all-time high. And I've been talking a lot about how I believe that this current breakout for Ethereum is the exact same move. Now, we did see the deleveraging event. We did see this massive sell-off that came in here. So many people are starting to get fearful again. Many people have actually already panic sold and moved into cash. And I'm telling you guys right now that I'm hopeful by the end of this video you understand why this is an opportunity to get in, why it's one of those rare opportunities that pop up every cycle to be able to jump in at massive discounts, and why anybody that's really looking to jump into cash right now is going to miss out on a huge opportunity. Because I'm telling you guys right now, I've seen this pattern before, and the opportunity that we have trading it once more is absolutely massive. Now, if we jump into the shorter time frames with Ethereum, let's actually map it out, because here's the thing with this pattern. We've done it 2 different times. We did it right here, and we're doing it right here once more. And really, you could even look at this entire consolidation here to the high, back down is the same move. If we come and actually overlay the entire COVID consolidation on the Bitcoin price, which is the same consolidation that Ethereum has been doing, if we actually overlay this over the consolidation that Ethereum just went through, you're going to see a lot of the same parallels here, where you kind of find this support level, same thing as here. It sells off and finds support, and it bounces. Everybody thinks that this is the real breakout. Everybody assumes that the reversal set in. Same thing happens here. And then that's what sets us in for that final spring-loaded bounce, the true capitulation, where the market breaks support, goes for a lower low, and really this is the same consolidation that we're going in through once more. And one thing that I noticed over the course of trading these cycles is that when a market starts breaking bullish, you're going to see it do kind of these same sort of fractals as it goes up in the up cycle. Notice how this pattern here is the same move. Drops to support, fake breakout, final capitulation. This is the same exact consolidation. We can overlay this on the higher time frames as well. I've been talking to you guys a lot about how I believe that this entire consolidation for Ethereum is the same thing as Bitcoin's last cycle. And that's all indicated right over in here. We can see that when we overlay the two, it's virtually the same consolidation here. Same thing with the run up here, the peak high, kind of start that consolidation before the top, We reject, we fall to that support. Same thing happened here. This is the fake breakout. Same thing happened here, and then that takes us into that final capitulation. We're repeating the same fractals over and over again, and that's what gives me a lot of confidence to keep buying into this dip, is because even though the market is having this big capitulation, even though that we had this deleveraging event that trapped a lot of people, when we're zooming out on the higher time frames, we can tell that all this is pretty much the same pattern that we've been repeating ever since we began this cycle. There's really not a difference in the world, in my opinion. So when I'm looking out and I can see that we're repeating the same fractal, which we also repeated all the way back down in here, we keep repeating the same thing. We had this big lengthy consolidation, and then that led us into that final capitulation. Now as we've started to reverse, we've seen it once right here where we had this range, break down from the range, trap everybody, and then we go back up again. Same thing happened here. We have the range. We have this massive capitulation that traps everybody, and then that's what precedes us to go back up again. This is what we've seen 3 different times to begin this cycle. And so when I'm zooming out and we're looking at Ethereum on the higher time frames, and we know that Ethereum has already broken out of all of its downtrending resistance. That's what it just did right over in here. We had all that downtrending resistance for the last 3+ years. We broke out of that, and then we've just been retesting that. Even though we saw that deleveraging event, having this same exact pattern playing out once more that we've already seen play out right over in here, that we've already seen Bitcoin repeat in the last cycle before it went into this massive new all-time high, it's not coincidental as to why this is happening. We are literally right here at the beginning of this cycle for Ethereum, right before this whole new all-time high sets in. And yet you have so many people that have now panic sold. They've moved out of the market completely just because of one little retest of this downtrending resistance. Guys, deleveraging events are going to happen. When we look at all of our major indexes, not one of these broke support, even though they had this massive wick down in here. This is market manipulation. This is market manipulation from the people that get to see everybody's orders. When we're looking at all of these longs, I mean, you're basically counter trading the exchange. So the exchange gets to see all of your buys, sells, liquidation prices. They see all of that. So when there's a bunch of over-leveraged people, they can basically come out and short the market, and as they're shorting it, it starts liquidating their user base, and as their positions are starting to get liquidated, they have to sell at a premium. They're basically having to take their loss, and they're having to sell at a lesser price, and then this causes the market to basically cascade down to the downside. And so these big liquidation events, it's just from too many longs, all getting liquidated, having to sell their assets at a loss, and it's actually making the price go down quicker, liquidating more people, and that's why you see these big wicks that come in here. So when we're looking at all of these, and we can see that we're still holding support, we never even broke down. Even though we had this 40% wick, we never actually even broke down from support. We come over here, same thing. We're right on support. We've yet to break down. 40% wick, yet the price is pretty much at the same level it was. This is the total 3. Same thing. Another 50% wick, yet the price is closing right back at that same support. This entire wick is pretty much a nothing. It doesn't mean anything because the price wasn't really real. It was all just over-leveraged longs getting liquidated on Binance at pretty much the exact same time, which cascaded the selling into liquidating even more people, and you basically just had this gigantic spike in the liquidations. That's what this wick is really encompassed by. So when we're looking and seeing that Ethereum is still sitting on support, it's still holding that breakout, it still looks identical to Bitcoin's last cycle, and then when we're even zooming into the smaller time frames and looking at this consolidation and how it's just repeating the same exact fractal that it already did, repeating the smaller version of the bigger fractal that we've already been watching for the last year or more, this is a really exciting time where we do have an opportunity to get in at some cheap prices. We did have an opportunity to snag some discounted crypto. If you did that, congratulations. If you didn't do that, I just hold. I still think that we're headed in the exact same direction. Nothing changed. The only difference is we finally got a liquidation of some of those over-leveraged longs. Generally speaking, right before the big upside of the cycle sets in, you do see a lot of these big liquidations. I kind of thought that we would have already experienced that, just indicated over in here when Ethereum went from 4,100 all the way back down to 1,300. I kind of thought that that would be the deleveraging event, but Even on the breakout, there was still too many over-leveraged longs. It was really easy for those exchanges to counter trade, and they did so. And this is really what I think is going to be playing out next for us. You know, we got the deleveraging event. I think that everybody that was over-leveraged got liquidated, and they're pretty much just out. Now we have that opportunity for the price to actually pick back up. And I don't find it coincidental that Ethereum is following almost the exact same fractals as what Bitcoin did. And then even in the shorter time frames, this entire deleveraging event is almost the exact same pattern as this same fractal. And if you guys remember, this is what I anticipate is going to be happening for our cycle from here. ETH is going to be rocketing upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 to finish this cycle. So to answer your questions, no, I'm not bearish. No, I don't think anything changed. I think that this was the final dip that we're ever going to see. If you want to buy that dip, now's your last chance. But for everybody else, I mean, all we're really going to be doing is just sitting on our hands and holding as these markets finally start to price up into new all-time highs. I'm not bearish in the slightest. I'm very confident that the market is going to bottom. We just have to kind of watch and see, wait for the dust to settle, because I'm confident that we're going to see this thing pick up in a big way. So guys, if you did find value in this video, please do me a favor. Hit the like, comment, and subscribe button. If you guys want to see anything that I'm buying, selling, trading over the rest of this cycle, and most importantly, when we take profits at the end, links are in the description. Go ahead and sign up for my private group. With that being said, guys, I appreciate the support. Hold on. Promise that we're almost there. The market's still very bullish, and I know that it's caught a lot of people off guard inside of this sell-off, but realistically, if you weren't over-leveraged, if you weren't sitting in a bunch of long positions, chances are you're pretty much unaffected by this, because none of the on-chain altcoins got affected. It was really just centralized exchange altcoins, and that's why I say, the more money that you have on-chain, the better. You can't trust these centralized exchanges. These deleveraging events are 100% from insider trading, and they literally are just ruining the user base for anybody that's trying to trade leverage. And I don't think it's a very healthy thing. So guys, if you weren't over-leveraged, if you weren't sitting in longs, chances are you're probably fine. All of your altcoins bounced back up again. But these are just kind of an early red flag that you got to be careful with it being over leveraged. But then most importantly, these are events that happen right before our big upside swings usually take place. So don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as a positive thing before we get that next big leg up into new all-time highs. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.